The fifth word from the cross is recorded for us in John's Gospel in chapter 19 and verse 28. It says, "Later, knowing that everything had been finished, and so that scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, 'I am thirsty.'" Jesus said, "I am thirsty." The humanness of Jesus is never a surprise. Because right from the beginning of the Gospels, when Jesus was introduced, the Bible was very clear that he, the Son of God, had taken on human form. Paul says in Philippians chapter 2 that who, that is Jesus, being in a very nature God, did not consider equality with God as something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. When Jesus became human, he was totally human. And there are many passages in which we find this human nature of Jesus very clearly portrayed for us. Yes, Jesus ate food like all of us do. He breathed the air, and he was very human physically. Mark chapter 4, verse 38, it says that when Jesus got into the boat, he said he slept. He slept. The one who neither sleeps or slumbers was now actually sleeping. John chapter 4, verse 6 says, Jesus was tired and he sat down near the well. These are all relating to the humanness of Jesus in terms of his body, but emotionally too, he was very human. It says he was overwhelmed with sorrow, Matthew 26 and verse 38. He felt other people's pain. In Luke 7, verse 13, it talks about a widow who was following her son's corpse. And what we find here is that Jesus was very moved when he saw her. And now on the cross, we see him asking for something to drink. He said, "I am thirsty." Now, the word thirst is used many times to relate to spiritual drink. Jesus told the woman at the well that I will give you living water, and whoever drinks of that water will never thirst again. John chapter 7, verse 37 says, whoever comes to him, after them will flow rivers of living water. Now, it's true that the Bible talks about what God gives as satisfying to us is also a spiritual drink. But in this verse, it is not about that spiritual aspect. Jesus was physically crying out because he was thirsty. And they gave him a drink. And it says in verse 30, when he had received the drink. And the beautiful thing here is that we notice the Bible records the vulnerability of God. When Jesus took on human form, he was totally vulnerable. And he expressed this vulnerability. The pain that he went through, the sorrow that was now breaking his heart, the need because he was tired, and now the cry that he was thirsty. I think it's important to understand in the world in which we live, these vulnerabilities which many people express. But in God's case, vulnerability is by choice. He became human, knowing fully well that he will be in a place where he will cry out to God. The writer of Hebrews says that he cried out to God many times with tears. And I feel very comfortable when I look at that to see how Jesus did not cover his vulnerability. He did not pretend that he was not human. These were normal human feelings. But sometimes we live in a world where people try to project themselves as not vulnerable, and we can't handle the vulnerability of other people. And I think what happens here is the vulnerability by choice. We live in a world today where we make choices in which we will never be vulnerable. But mission into which God has sent us or called us to is a choice to become vulnerable. It's not a choice in which we overcome and parade our victories. It is a choice to go through suffering. And in that suffering, there is hope. And this Good Friday, as we look at God's vulnerability by choice, maybe we will take decisions which are risky decisions in order to serve God. And those are decisions which perhaps are going to be costly, but it's a choice of vulnerability. May God bless us.